My name is Chris Campbell. I'm a practicing CPA and I work with small businesses and individuals to help them pay the least amount of taxes possible while keeping you out of jail. Today, I wanted to talk specifically to restaurant owners who pay out tips. A couple pointers that I think restaurant owners can use when it comes to paying out tips to employees that you pay out for your bartenders, servers, anyone that's in the hospitality business. This actually came about working with one of my restaurant clients. We're going through the process of doing payroll, and they have employees. We have to pay out the tips. As I was doing it, I realized that the client might be shorted a bit because when we were paying out the tips, we didn't take into account the processing fees for those tips paid on card. You may know that if you take or process a credit card or any online payments, there's a usually in the neighborhood of 3%. So if you were to charge $100 on a card, someone pays your company or your business through a credit card, Amex, Visa, whatever the case may be, it's $100. You don't get the full $100. There's a processing fee of roughly 3%. So essentially for every $100 that you charge, you may wind up with $97. Keeping that in mind, realize that part of that bill, when we're paying out tips, especially processed with cards, once you take into account that the processing fee, the restaurant doesn't necessarily have that full amount to pay out. As we went back and realized that with paying our tips, we had to back out the process charge because we're paying out more than what was actually collected at the end of the day. So I figured this would be a tip to share with folks that paying out tips, make sure you back out the processing fee, and it's roughly 3% for those tips that are paid on the card. Now, I will say this, when I first thought about it, I said the first thing is that you want to make sure that it's legal to back out the processing fee out of the tips per labor laws. It does vary from state to state. Before you start backing it out, make sure that it's legal in your state to do. So check the labor laws to make sure that it is legal. But assuming that it is, what you can do is find out what your credit card processing fees are, because they vary depending upon the processor that you're using. And then also some cards have a higher percentage than others. In this particular client's instance, they were a user of Toast, a very popular payment processor. In this particular client's instance, Amex has a different processing fee than the other credit card. Now, I don't know if that's across the board with Toast, or maybe it depends upon the client, maybe the volume, the processing, but in this particular instance, the processing fees were different. So find out what the processing fees are per card. And then what you're going to do is make sure that you back out those fees, or at least that percentage out of the tips that are collected. Now, you just want to do those that are processed with the credit card. Obviously, being paid with cash, you don't have to do that. There are a couple steps there, but if you think about it, 3% of all the tips that you pay over the course of time, that can add up. Definitely think that it's worth the exercise to do. Another thing to keep in mind with tips is that there is a tax credit that is available to restaurant owners. You can get a refund for the federal payroll taxes that you pay on tips, right? As many of you may know, when you pay on any payroll, and this is tips included, there are payroll taxes that are associated with that the employer has to pay, right? The federal payroll taxes come out to roughly 7.65% of everything that's paid. Put it in simpler terms, for every $100 that you pay out, another $7.65 to it. So for every $100 that you're paying, you're actually paying $107.65. Now, and that's just with federal. The states have their own payroll tax, so it's a little bit more, and there are limits involved. So it's not into infinity that you're paying 7.65%, but for most of your tipped workers, they probably won't, at least on the federal side, get that threshold. So 7.65% that you have to pay out. Now, this includes the tips that you have to pay out. However, the IRS does allow you to get a tax credit for those payroll taxes that you pay on tips. It is a form that needs to fill out. It's specifically called the 8846 form. It allows you to get a credit on those taxes paid. Now, you file it with your income tax return of your business. If you are a sole proprietor or a single member LLC, this is a form that will go directly on your personal tax return. If you're a part of an S corporation or partnership, it's filed with that return. If you are filing a corporate return, just make sure that whoever's preparing the return is applying that credit. And yeah, if you're a sole proprietor on yourself, but I just want to make sure that something can easily be overlooked. It can be a nice credit to receive because it's 7.65% are all tips that you can get a credit for. That can quickly add up. So you want to make sure that you're taking advantage of that. All right. So that's all for now. Just some quick, useful tips for restaurant owners that are paying out tips. And I hope trying to help. So that's all for now. If you have any more questions about this particular topic or any other tax accounting related topic, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help. All right. That's all for now, and I'll see you in the next one.